You can't hear me. Now you can. Hey, what's happening? I'm Tim Moxie. Thank you for joining me on my live stream today. I am here to talk to you today about some breathing. This is my second live stream on YouTube, and we're getting into it. And we're gonna what I really want to talk about is some singing technique stuff. So, I said last week, I've taught over 20,000 lessons in my life in singing, and these are some of the things that I've picked up on. And I think something that a lot of people talk about when they talk about breathing is that it's almost like a fix-all. But we'll get into that in a sec. I have about 7 ideas of ways to use breathing in a really creative way in your own singing. And one thing I just love to touch on before we do anything else is one of my overarching concepts whenever it comes to teaching singing or anyone who's learning singing is I always say you have to have a reason why you do something vocally. So I always say you're allowed to make any vocal sound that you'd like, but you must have a reason for it and know how not to do it. To me, that's like the ultimate in vocal technique and understanding how to use your voice and work with your voice. So, but before we do anything else, I would love to share with you something that I have been listening to. It has been absolutely mind-blowing in my week this week, and has really helped me kind of focus in and get happening. So I'm hoping it'll do the same for you. And I'll put a video in the description when I upload this. But the guy's name is Tony Anderson, and the song I've been listening to is Midway, and it's like a instrumental ambient kind of music, and I really love it. It's really, really cool. So I hope you check it out. I'll put a link to the video that's on YouTube. But yeah, I've been really loving that. I'd love to know in the chat what you guys have been listening to, if you're in there, and even if you're watching this a little bit later on, if you want to chuck it down in the comments, share something you've been listening to that's been really inspiring you as a singer and as a creative. Now, here's the thing, right? I hear a lot of people talk about breathing and in singing, and it's almost like breathing and breath support and using more support is going to fix every single problem that you have in singing. You can't hit the high note, more support. If you can't do mixed voice, more support. I don't know. I hear this a lot. And I was having a conversation with some singers the other day, and I said in my teaching, I don't actually talk that much about breathing, because while it is the underpinning of everything that we do in singing, it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. It's not the only thing that matters when it comes to singing. And it's not going to fix everything for you. But it is really important. And I think in saying that I don't focus on breathing a lot, that kind of makes it seem like I don't think it's important. And it is, because it underpins everything that you do in singing. It is the power source. It's the thing that generates the energy and what gets your vocal cords moving. And I'd like to just talk about how breathing works for a little bit, but I'm not really here to talk about singing. I am here to talk about singing technique, but in so much as it can help you be more creative as a singer, not necessarily help you with issues. I mean, I know there's lots of people on YouTube who are talking about how to become a better singer and that kind of thing, and that's I'm all for that. But for me, I really want to focus in on what you can do creatively with your voice in order to get your message across, in order to sing that song in a different way, to kind of get a different sound and a different thing going on. So, but first of all, let's talk about breathing, and let's talk about how it works and what you should do to have good breathing in your singing. So the diaphragm is something that gets talked about a lot. The diaphragm is a big sheet of muscle that sits underneath your lungs. It separates the thoracic region from the abdominal region. And it is a muscle. When people talk about the diaphragm, I think sometimes I like to ask my students, what is the diaphragm? And so often, I get answers like, it's here. or it's, and I'm like, that's where it is. That's not what it is. So I want to talk about what it is. It's a sheet of muscle, and muscles can really only do two things. They can contract and they can relax. And the diaphragm, when it contracts, it flattens out. And when it relaxes, it goes back to its normal position. So when we contract the diaphragm, we're drawing air into the lungs, we're creating negative pressure in the lungs, and we're increasing volume, decreasing pressure, the air's flowing to that negative pressure, and then as we breathe out again, we're increasing the pressure, decreasing the volume, and the air is flowing back out again. That is a really basic overview of how breathing in singing works. And one of the ways that I like to think about it, and one of the ways that I teach about it, I have 4 different steps that I use. So the first step is posture. So posture is really important because if we don't have good posture, then the diaphragm's not free to move. And so that's a really important step. So posture, and then taking a low breath. So, but not taking too much breath. So taking a nice low breath, and then holding that breathed in position. So step 3 is holding, but not like pushing, not like shoving, kind of thing. It's just holding that breathed in position. And then when you need to take another breath, just top up the breath. So when you're sustaining over a whole phrase, then you're holding that breathed in position, and that's the really important kind of thing. And then topping up that breath and not letting the breathing collapse. So to me, that is breath support, breathing, and some students need to work on it a lot more, and some don't. Some kind of just have it innately, and it kind of works. I do talk about it a lot. I do talk about it in lessons, but not over and over and over again. We kind of deal with it and then do some other things, and if it becomes an issue, then we talk about it more. So I have 7 different ideas about how we can talk about breathing in our singing to help try and get some more, creativity into our singing, and not just think about breathing as breath support and as something that's going to just fix all our problems, because it's not going to. So I have 7 different ideas, and I've got a couple of examples that I'd like to share with you. But the thing that I really want you to always have in the back of your mind whenever you're kind of making any creative choice and any creative decision with your singing, really, you always have to come back to have a reason why. You're allowed to make any vocal sound as long as you know how not to do it, and as long as you have a reason. They're always the things that I want to come back to. I get so many people who just go, oh, that's just the way I sing it. That's just that's just how I do it. Which is fine, and you're allowed to do that. But I really think having a reason can help to take your level of singing to that next level. It can help to take the meaning behind your singing right to that next level. So that's what we're going to have a look at today. So one of the most viewed videos on my YouTube channel is my cover of "You're the Voice," which is a great song. It's a classic Australian song, and I did that video a long time ago, and I know a lot more about production and video and all that kind of stuff. And I've been toying around with doing another version of it to upload onto my YouTube channel, but that's a whole nother point. One of the things that I do in that particular song, when I sing it, I tend to hold from the pre-chorus over into the chorus. And this is a thing where you're extending the breath from one phrase to another. So you get this connection of 2 phrases when normally, in a song, normally you would take a break in the middle of a sentence, right? So if you have a separate sentence, you're going to then cut and then take a breath and move on to the next little bit. But in this particular song, I tend to go over that pre-chorus into the chorus. I'll demonstrate it for you. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay. So if we go, let's turn that down a little bit. So the pre-chorus is the, ooh, we're all someone's daughter, we're all someone's son. each other. And here's where we carry it over, right? Down the barrel of a gun, you're the voice, try and understand it. And you can carry it over. And I feel like it, you know, I mean, my reasoning for doing it is it creates excitement. You know, it creates an emphasis of the point that you're trying to make. At that particular point, you're heading into the chorus, it's doing a big build. You know, while it might be a cool virtuosic moment that, you know, that helps you show your control and your breath and your breathing, it's not what it's for, right? It's an excitement. It creates that like build and makes people go, oh man, that's cool. And it's, you know, it's building that excitement and making people listen in even closer. And I just, you know, that's one thing that you could do. I mean, I'd love to know, you know, how you would use that kind of thing, holding over from one phrase to another, and doing a really long, not taking a breath. I should also say, all of these ideas that I've come up with, you know, they're not the only ideas that you can use breathing, but I want to encourage people to use singing techniques in different kind of ways. And if you have a reason for it, and if you put it out there with a reason, and that you have a reason why you do it, it's going to help bring the meaning of your songs up. It's going to help to really drive the message behind what you're trying to do. So I think it's really cool. One example, I've had a number of students sing a song from Newsies that's called "Watch What Happens," and it's got a really kind of fast phrase, like over the front of the song, with some really, really fast lyrics. And I think there's been a number of times where we've tried to do that whole front phrase in one breath, and the character in that particular moment is feeling really frantic and is really just like excited and doing and if you can kind of carry it over in one breath, as if you're like talking to someone and going you know, and not taking breath, you know, you're so excited that you just completely forget to breathe. You know, that's a way that you can use breathing in order to communicate, you know, an emotion from a character. And so the more that you can communicate that emotion without, you know, overacting or without, you know, by using your singing technique, the more that meaning is going to come across. And it's, you know, it's an interesting way to kind of play around with it. You should check out the song and see what you reckon. So the next one is to swell at the end of a long note. So the same kind of idea as what we got in this You're the Voice. One of my favorite singers of all time is Kurt Elling, and Kurt Elling does this all the time. He'll hold a big long note and then swell right at the very end, which technically isn't necessarily breathing just by itself. You know, there's a lot of things that go into singing, but obviously that, you know, be able to hold long enough and swell right at the end of that phrase is quite a virtuosic thing to be able to do. And he is an incredible singer. He has, you know, many albums, and I've got lots of them, and I love listening to them. And it's definitely worth having a listen to how he uses that. But I think that, you know, there's ways that we can use that as well. I'm going to use You're the Voice, the same thing that I just sang, and show you a way that we can use that, right? So this is actually combining the two, holding over a phrase and then doing a swell right at the end of that long note. So if we go the... Ooh, we're all someone's daughter, we're all someone's son. How long can we look at each other? Down the barrel of a gun, you're the voice, trying to understand it, make a noise and make it clear. It's that kind of thing, right? You know, you kind of swell and create an emphasis for that, where you're leading into it. You can really kind of build that dynamic by holding that note and really swelling it at the end. And I think it's a cool effect that we can use and kind of maintain that that air and kind of do something really interesting. So yeah, swelling at the end. I wonder how you could use that in your own music. Swelling at the end of a note. It doesn't have to be a crazy long note. It could just be, singing a bar and then swelling into the end of it and dropping it in. As long as you have a reason to do it, as long as you can reason it out, it'll be a cool effect and it'll be a cool thing to do. So then my third point here is, again, related to this same kind of thing that I was talking about before, which is getting to the end of your air. I think sometimes we don't necessarily love that idea that we don't love the idea of running out of air. And this is probably something you need to practice in order to actually execute really well on stage, because there could be times when it gets a bit frantic and whatever. It's certainly something that you could put into, in like practice in the studio as well, or when you're recording, it could be a really interesting effect. And getting to the end, and it's almost like it's a desperation. You're getting to the end of that, and it's like, I haven't breathed enough, and so you can hear it on the end. If I'm singing that over that two phrases, it's quite a long sustaining of the breath all the way over, and so that sustain, by the time I'm at the end of it, the tonal color's changing, and there's like we can emphasize that a little bit more. So let's have a look at that. So we go down the barrel of a gun, your voice trying to understand it, make a noise and make it clearer. It probably wasn't massively obvious at the end there, but there was like a desperation that I was like, I really need to take a breath. There's that feeling of going, there's a desperateness in what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to communicate in that, because it's, I'm really just trying to say it in one breath. I'm trying to get my message across. And, this song works because it does have that emotive quality to it, in the lyrics. But when you get to the end of your air, there's there's almost an exasperation, or there's like a passion there. Almost the same way of like, if you're so excited, you're not taking a breath, and you're not like, you just kind of motor mouth and keep going, right? It kind of has that same kind of thing, but it's probably got more of a passionate kind of thing. I don't know. That would be how I would take it, really. Actually, I'm not going to put this down. We're gonna jump onto another one. Those first three are kind of related in the fact that you can hold over two phrases. You can even swell at the end of those two phrases, and you could get to the end of your air on those two phrases. But in saying that, you could use them all separately and kind of think about how you would implement that into your own singing to create more meaning and more emphasis and something kind of cool. Now, I've been thinking about these other ones, and it's kind of funny because they feel a bit contrived sometimes when you're trying to put them into something. But I'm gonna do my best. One of the songs I've been thinking about was "Thinking About You" by Frank Ocean. I really love the album Channel Orange, and so that particular song came to mind when I was talking about this, because I've heard a number of people do this cover and do like snatched breaths. So, sorry, I should tell you what my third point is. And it's doing a breath between notes. It doesn't need to necessarily be every note. Actually, the thing that comes to mind is there's that character from Malcolm in the Middle that always took a breath between every word. It's that kind of idea, but it's you probably don't have to go that extreme and take a breath between every word. If you were doing a musical theatre piece, you may be able to make a character point, for that kind of thing. But in pop music, you could use it as a rhythmical kind of element. You could use it for a meaning thing. And in musical theatre, there's obviously a lot more emphasis on telling the story and a lot more emphasis on the acting side of things. And in contemporary music, there's a lot more focus on an aesthetically pleasing thing. So it's, you know, if it sounds cool or if it, you know, we kind of like it more. But I think I'd love to see contemporary singers using these techniques and using this acting and even just some of the things that I've learned from musical theatre that I've brought over into my contemporary singing to help bring more meaning and more story and more, you know, emotional connection to a song. So that's a point. But this particular song, I was thinking about it and thinking about how you'd snatch breaths. So let me see if I can do it. We'll try. So it goes in the... A tornado flew around my room before you came. Excuse the mess it made. It usually doesn't rain in Southern California, much like Arizona. My eyes don't shed tears, but boy, they bawl when I'm thinking about you. No. You see what I mean? So you're kind of snatching little breaths here and there. Let me try it again. Let's see if we can get a better thing going. A tornado flew around my room before you came. Excuse the mess it made. It usually doesn't rain in Southern California, much like Arizona. My eyes don't shed tears, but boy, they bawl when I'm thinking about you. No, I've been thinking about you. No, I've been... See what I'm saying, right? There's that just a little snatching of breath in the midst of things, you know, to kind of create some rhythm, to kind of create some interest points. You know, you could use it to communicate like an emotional struggle. It's, you know, something you could implement into your singing in order to create a different kind of effect. But again, I mean, I'd love you to think about how you would use that in your own singing, and how you could possibly use that to communicate your message even more with either your own songs or cover songs, or if you're doing musical theatre kind of stuff, that kind of thing as well. So I've been thinking about this, and this is probably okay. My next point is taking a breath in the middle of a word, and this is kind of a big singing teacher no-no. Like if a student takes a breath in the middle of a word, it's kind of like, you shouldn't do that. But I was thinking about it, and I go, I wonder if there's a time when you could actually use that and have it as an interesting point, or as an interesting kind of break. And so I don't know. I'd be interested to see how other people use that in a song. But it's just something that I was playing around with, because sometimes we have a break in our thoughts. You know, if we're talking to someone and we go, there's a moment of silence where we've kind of half said something, but we start thinking about it. There'd be a way to use that in a song to communicate that same concept. It might be challenging to land, but it could be really creatively interesting, and that's something I'd really love to play around with in the future. If you're watching live, if you have any questions, I'd love at the end if I can answer some questions, or if there's anything going on. You can even just jump in the chat and say hi. That'd be cool too. Okay. This is my second last point, so we're up to number 6. Breathe like you were having a conversation. Now, this is something that I've thought a lot about when it comes to musical theatre. There's one of my favorite musicals of all time is The Last 5 Years, which is a Jason Robert Brown musical. And the song that really came to mind for me was If I Didn't Believe in You. And it starts with, there are people and they are publishing my book, and there's a party that they are throwing. And while you've made it very clear that you're not going, I will be going. And that's done. you know, there's like those pauses as he's singing it. And I love the way that Jason Robert Brown has written that melody, because it really feels like he's talking, and it feels like he's having that dialogue in the song. And it's, you know, it's certainly the way that it's written that kind of gives it that feeling, but it has that feeling of breath. It has that feeling of a real conversation. And I really love that. And I think it's an absolute genius way to write. And, you know, I think for a singer-songwriter to write their own songs in that kind of way, to think about how that would communicate their song and their message even more, to kind of write a melody in that kind of way, or to perform with that kind of conversational style breathing, is a really it's an engaging kind of way of performing. It's an engaging way of thinking about your breathing, and can really bring an interesting story element to your actual singing. So yeah, my last point that I'm gonna throw in here is something I actually do all the time, and I'm gonna try and do it in a song. But the problem is sometimes it can sound a little contrived when you're trying to just throw it in there. But it's a laugh. So if I'm doing like just a little like kind of thing, you know, it can communicate joy. It can communicate like a happiness. It can communicate a realization. It can, you know, there's different ways that you could reason it out to communicate what you're trying to use it for. The song that I thought of was James Taylor's "Fire and Rain." Now, if you know anything about me, I would suggest my favorite artist of all time is actually James Taylor, and I love his music. Although, funnily enough, "Fire and Rain" is not my favorite song of his. But anyway, let me try and do it, and let's see if we can make it feel real. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. Seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. So I used, I don't know if you heard it, but there was two in there. There was like a slight on the front of halfway through on one of the phrases, and then there was before I sang a line, there was like a kind of thing, and that is something that like I said, I use that in my own singing a lot, and maybe it doesn't land for you, maybe it does, but you know, you obviously have to think about how it works in your own voice and in your own performance style. But I think there can be a real sincerity about reacting the way that you would if you were it's the way you would do it if you were talking, and the way you would laugh, or the way that you would kind of just drop in a little yeah, that's really interesting. And you know, so for me, I talk like that, and that's me. But you know, I think for another artist, it might look different. It might be a bit of a different. It might be a different kind of thing. My wife just messaged me and said her favorite breath is the one on the Jeff Buckley when he does Hallelujah, and he just does like a big kind of thing. I love that. That is such a real moment, and really is such a great thing on that particular track. So really, I agree. That brings a lot of meaning and substance to that thing. Very cool. So that was my seven different points, and that was hang on, let me just go through them again. Which was holding over two phrases, so joining two phrases with one whole big breath, and then swelling at the end of a note, like getting to the end of a long note and doing it even just a bit of a bigger swell. Getting to the end of your air, like getting to the thing, getting that like exasperated kind of sound at the end. Breathing between notes or words and getting a cool like rhythmical thing happening, or like an emotional kind of thing. You know, I think one of the biggest ways you could think about it is by doing think about how you would say it, think about how you would talk about it, and that'd kind of create that same interest. Breaths in the middle of words. I know I didn't give much of an example there, but I think when you have a breath in the middle of a word, it could be a really interesting way of, I don't know, breaking the song down a little bit. I'd be really interested to see how anyone uses that creatively. I'm going to play around with it myself. Breathe like you were having a conversation, like you would do in acting and musical theater. But I really want to encourage singer-songwriters and singing creatives to really think about how they're using that conversational kind of breathing and style in their own music, and then a little like laugh or a little like outward thing of air. So something that comes up a lot when I talk to singing teachers is people gasping. That always lots of breathing noise when it comes, on recordings. I'm not a fan of that kind of thing. I feel like it sounds fake. It doesn't land real well for me. That might just be my singing teacherness coming out and going, oh, that's not good technique. But I think that's that is another way that you can use breath. But I don't know. I think there's probably more genuine ways to use air than just like noisy, gaspy kind of sounds. So I'm not a fan of that. But remember, my big point on anything that I'm talking about when it comes to singing is have a reason why. Have a reason why you do something. So, and I always say this to my students, you're allowed to make any vocal sound that you want, as long as you know how not to do it, and as long as you have a reason. And that would be my big point to any singer doing something creative and trying something different. Play with those things, because they make a difference. But you don't want to be lazy and just go, oh, that's just how I do it. You want to have a reason why you do it, and you want to be able to not do it, because that shows how skilled of a singer that you are. So very good. Well, that's the end of my live stream. I hope you got something out of that. If you did, please like the video. Also, you can book sessions with me to talk about your singing. We doesn't necessarily have to be a singing lesson, but we can just talk singing. We can talk creativeness. We can talk anything that you'd like to. You can book sessions on my website, which is going to be linked in the description down below. Please give that a go. Even just comment down the bottom how you would use breathing. I mean, like I said before, these 7 ideas are just kind of some that I was thinking about as I was thinking about doing this live stream. There are so many ways that you can creatively use singing techniques, and I want people to explore that more than just going, well, this is exactly how you have to do everything when you breathe, when you sing. There's no one way to do anything. There are some really interesting and cool things that you can do with singing technique to make it work. So, please comment about that down below. Also, comment about the music that you've been listening to. I love hearing new music, so that'll be a cool thing to hear about. Very good. I will catch you all on the next one.